On the last night of his life, the fattest king in Westerosi history called for a quill. He could barely hold it. His fingers were swollen. His body was a monument to 30 years of excess, so vast that he had to be carried between rooms, so ruined that the maesters had long since stopped pretending he might recover. But his mind was sharp with spite. He signed one document, one decree, and with that single stroke of ink, he destroyed his dynasty more thoroughly than any war, any rebellion, any dragon ever could. He legitimized every bastard he had ever fathered, all of them, at once, given the full rights of true-born Targaryen heirs. 5 generations of civil war followed. That is the legacy of Aegon IV of his name, Aegon the Unworthy, the worst king who ever lived. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Blood of the Dragon. Episode 11, Aegon the Unworthy. When a deathbed wish started 5 wars, he was not born a monster. The histories say that young Aegon was handsome, tall, strong, a skilled rider, a charming conversationalist, the kind of prince who filled a room with laughter and left a trail of broken hearts behind him. The ugliness came later. He inherited the throne from his father, Viserys II, who had ruled wisely for barely a year before dying, possibly by poison, possibly by Aegon's own hand. The first thing the new king did was surround himself with pleasures. 9 mistresses are named in the histories, though the true number was certainly higher. Each one came with a story, a scandal, and a consequence that would echo for generations. But the cruelty was not only in his appetites, it was in his marriage. His wife was Naerys Targaryen, his own sister, small, frail, deeply pious. She had wanted to join the faith, to live as a scepter, to pray and serve and leave the court behind forever. Instead, she was married to her brother because the dynasty demanded it. Naerys begged Aegon to let her go. After the birth of their son Daemon, she pleaded, physically weakened by a labor that had nearly killed her, to be released from the marriage, to take holy vows, to be free. He refused, not because he loved her, because he owned her, and ownership to Aegon was its own kind of pleasure. He humiliated her publicly. He paraded his mistresses through court. He forced Naerys to watch as he lavished gifts and attention on women who were everything she was not: bold, beautiful, shameless, willing. And when Naerys retreated further into prayer, Aegon mocked her for that too. The only shield she had was her brother, Aemon, the Dragonknight, the greatest knight of his generation. Tall, silver-haired, wielder of the Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister. He had been named to the Kingsguard at 17 and served with such distinction that the realm considered him the finest swordsman alive. He loved Naerys. The histories disagree about the nature of that love. Some say it was the pure, chaste devotion of a brother sworn to celibacy. Others whisper that they were lovers and that the prince who became King Daemon II was not Aegon's son at all, but Aemon's. What is certain is that Aemon stood between Naerys and the worst of Aegon's cruelty. When a knight named Morgul accused the queen of infidelity, Aemon demanded trial by combat and cut the man down. When Aegon's rages grew violent, it was Aemon who stepped in front of his sister. And when assassins came for Aegon in the night, members of the disgraced Toyne family, seeking revenge for a brother the king had tortured to death, it was Aemon who threw himself between the killers and the king. He died protecting the man who tormented the woman he loved. That was the Dragonknight, a man caught between duty and devotion, who chose duty every time and paid for it with everything. But Aegon's greatest act of destruction came not in life, but in death. By his final years, the king had grown so fat that he could not walk. He was carried on a litter. His skin was covered in sores. His appetites had consumed his body the way his cruelty had consumed his court. And on his deathbed, with the realm watching and the maesters recording, he signed the decree. Every bastard, legitimized. The ones he had fathered on highborn women, the ones he had fathered on tavern girls, the ones he barely remembered. All of them, in a single stroke, given the Targaryen name and the right to press a claim to the Iron Throne. 4 of them mattered. Demon Blackfyre, the Golden Sun, the warrior, the one Aegon had loved most, or at least displayed most proudly. He was tall, handsome, strong, everything a prince should be, and Aegon had given him the ultimate gift, the Valyrian steel sword Blackfyre, the blade of the Conqueror himself. It was the sword that had forged the 7 kingdoms, and now a bastard held it. If you give a bastard the Sword of Kings, what do you think he will do? Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven, the pale sun, an albino with one red eye, thin as a blade, cold as the wall. He would become the most feared Spymaster in Targaryen history, a man who was said to have 1,000 eyes and one. He chose the legitimate king's side, not out of loyalty, but because power requires structure, and structure requires law. Aegon Rivers, Bittersteel, the bitter sun. Half bracken, raised on resentment, fueled by rejection. He loved Shiera Seastar and was refused. He backed Daemon Blackfyre and lost. He fled to Essos and founded the Golden Company, a mercenary army made of exiled Westerosi lords who carried their grudge across the narrow sea for 5 generations. Beneath the Golden Company's battle standard was a newer motto, Bittersteel's own. Beneath the gold, the Bittersteel, and Shiera Seastar, the most beautiful woman in Westeros, half Lysine with one blue eye and one green, silver gold hair, and a mind as sharp as any lord's. Both Bloodraven and Bittersteel loved her. She chose Bloodraven, and Bittersteel never forgave it. That is the engine of the Blackfyre rebellions. Not politics, not law, not even ambition, though ambition played its part. Jealousy. A man loved a woman. She chose someone else, and the man who was refused decided to burn the world down rather than live in it without her. Demon Blackfyre raised his banner, the sword of the Conqueror in his hand, half the realm at his back, and the claim his father had given him on a deathbed soaked with spite. He marched against King Daemon II, the legitimate son, the bookish king who had won Dawn through marriage instead of war. The first Blackfyre rebellion. It would not be the last. 4 more followed, stretching across 60 years, fueled by the Golden Company, by Bittersteel's hatred, by the dream of a bastard king who had held the Conqueror's sword and believed it meant something. 5 wars, tens of thousands dead. An entire branch of the Targaryen family tree born in bastardy and raised on the promise that one day the sword would outweigh the crown. All because a dying man, consumed by spite, decided to weaponize his children. That was Aegon IV, the Unworthy, not the maddest king, not the cruelest, but the one who did the most damage with the least effort. A single signature, a single night, and the dynasty cracked from within. So tell me this, was the legitimization decree an act of cruelty, an act of love for his bastards, or simply the last weapon of a man who wanted the world to burn after he left it? Write it in the comments, and if you want to hear what happened next, when brother faced brother at the Battle of the Redgrass Field, when Bloodraven's arrows darkened the sky, and when a golden sword fell in the mud, and the dream of a bastard king died with it. Subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time, the Blackfyre Rebellion begins, and the realm bleeds red.